The dissolution studies are the performance testing studies for the behavior of the formulation inside the body, or in other words, you can say dissolution studies are the in vitro studies to understand or to study the in vivo behavior. This video is related to the bioequivalence study under fasting and fed condition or fasting and fed state, and its relation to the dissolution media and the dissolution studies. Bioequivalence of the dissolution testing means we can understand by doing the dissolution testing by in vitro testing that how the drug product will behave inside the body. You can also understand it by taking the knowledge or understanding of the IVIVC. As we know that the food can affect the pharmacokinetics of the formulation. That's why many times the drug products are tested in the fasting and fed state both. And whenever you require the formulation to meet bioequivalence in fasting and fed state, that time we need to do the dissolution studies in different medias so that we can understand whether there is any biorelevance IVIVC possible or not. I welcome all the viewers to this informative video, and I request you to be with me till the end of this video so that you will understand many things. Bioequivalence study is the study which compares the rate and extent of absorption of the test and reference products. Bioequivalence study is the study of pharmacokinetics of two formulations, and it is impacted by the food state or the presence or absence of the food in the GI. So, impact of fasting versus fed state and role of dissolution media in simulating the GI conditions become very important. Fasting study is required sometimes fasting and fed is required, and sometimes only fed study is required. So, how it is decided? First is fasting study when it is required. Default study type for most of the immediate release formulations for the oral administration, and it is to be done when the RLD says take on an empty stomach or no mention of the food impact. That time the fasting state study is performed. The advantage of this study is that it minimizes the variability and reflects the absorption without any interference of the food. Then coming to the fed study when it is required. So when the RLD label says that take with food, food affects absorption significantly. That time fed study is required. It is critical for the DCS class 2 and 4 drugs which are low solubility drugs and for the modified release type of formulations. Regulatory expectations from the USFDA and EMA are like these require the fed B studies so that it can be understood how the food is affecting the pharmacokinetics. Dissolution media to be selected based on the fasting and fed state. There is a clear relation between the dissolution media and the fasting and fed state. Dissolution media for the fasting state to simulate the GI conditions without food. Common media is 0.1 normal HCl with pH 1.2. It is a simulated gastric pH. Then simulated gastric fluid SGF. Fasted state simulated intestinal fluid. It is abbreviated as or generally known as FASIF. It is used to evaluate in vitro performance of the formulation in the fasted conditions. In fasting condition, generally consider the 0.1 normal HCl. And whenever you are working on to formulation which is immediate release type of formulation, without any modification to the release, like immediate release tablet, capsules or granules or sachets, which are required to be swallowed without making the solution outside. Then consider point on normal HCl as a dissolution media will give you the clear understanding about the fasted state. Dissolution media for the fed state, it simulates the postprandial GI environment, that is GI environment after meal. Media fed state simulated intestinal fluid. It is generally abbreviated as known as FACIF. It reflects bile salt and lipid component of the fed state required for BE assessment in the fed condition. Now alignment of BE study with resolution media, because there is a relation, there is a biorelevance between resolution study with specific media and the BE study conditions. Key principle is the in vitro test must reflect BE study condition. If both fasting and fed BE studies are required, then perform dissolution testing in FACIF and FACIF. These are the biorelevant medias. Nowadays, biorelevant medias are available as ready mix type of preparations. You need to take them and use them directly, and you can get the dissolution media ready. Use of the similarity factor F2 calculation to compare test versus reference profiles. Aligning media with BE condition improves the prediction of bioequivalence. You need to perform the dissolution in FACIF and FACIF for the test and reference formulation and compare how the formulations behave in vitro, and from that you can get the information or understanding about the in vivo behavior. Practical example here I have taken BCS class 2 drug. It is weekly basis, basic nature, and this is the basis for the dissolution media and the bioequivalence steady state. Low solubility in the acidic pH. It will be having better solubility in bile salt rich media. Label says take with food. So fed study is required. In vitro, you can test it by using the passive dissolution media to simulate the fed state. Goal is to match the test product passive profile with RLD for regulatory support and also to have confidence for the BE studies. Fasting and fed BE study depend on the drug level and the absorption profile. Many of the times for the critical formulations, for the products which are having the high risk, for the products in which the solubility enhancement technique is there, that time fasting and fed BE studies are must. Then selection of the appropriate dissolution media is critical when the fasting and fed both are required. Dissolution testing in biorelevant media, FACIF, FACIF improves the predictability and it gives you clear idea about the formulation behavior. Ensure in vitro in vivo correlation through the aligned strategies. So this forms the basis for IVIVC. And if you have the data of the failed BE batches, then you can directly correlate the BE results with the dissolution media results or dissolution results and see whether there is a IVIVC possible or not. Now, the fasting and fed BE study. Once again, we will go through it. So, when fasting is required, when fed is required. Fasting is required or it is a default for most drugs, and when the RLD recommends to take the drug or medicine on empty stomach. Fed is required when RLD recommends food to take with food or food impacts the absorption. Fasting is applicable for BCS class 1 and 3 immediate release type of formulations. Fed study is required generally for the BCS class 2 and 4 drug products containing the BCS class 2 and 4 drugs and for the modified release formulations. Fasting BE study purpose is to evaluate performance in absence of food and fed evaluates the performance in presence of food. For fasting, common dissolution medias are 0.1 normal HCl, SGF and passive. For fed, it is passive, milk, insure plus if applicable. Physiological simulation for fasting is simulate the GI fluid in fasting state, while for fed, it simulates GI environment after meal or post high fat meal. Regulatory application of fasting required unless exempted, common for the most oral drugs. Generally, fasting state is the most discriminatory study. Fed state is required when the food affects the absorption or label mentions the food. Then for fasting, use in the dissolution testing, test release without influence of the bile salts and lipids, because bile salts and lipids can improve the solubility. But in fed, test release in presence of the bile salts, enzymes and fats. So in fed state, there may be improvement in the solubility, improvement in the dissolution for many of the drugs. Then for fasting, F2 similarity expectations, match test versus reference in fasted media, and for fed it is also same, that match test versus reference in the fed media. This is the information for dissolution media, dissolution testing, IVIVC and bioequivalence testing under fasting and fed conditions. If you have any question or queries, you can comment, you can mail me, and if you have any doubt regarding fasting and fed state, that also you can comment, you can share your thoughts, you can share your experiences, so that in the next upcoming video I will capture those points. Thank you for watching the video.